AJS says, as a Blues supporter, I am expletive pissed, sick of making excuses for this team. Do you think they should be further advanced than they are, Finey?
No. They relied heavily coming into this season on Patrick Cripps, which is unfair. Look, I think there's been some bright sparks. That recruit of Jack Martin, he's been more than they could have expected. I've been really impressed by Jack Martin. I think Wiedering's had a much better year, looked a bit sore by the end of tonight, but he's had a much better season. That back line's okay. That forward line really would benefit from Charlie Curnow, because Harry Mackay's a hard worker, but he's proven not to be a great goal kicker. So I'd like to see Harry Mackay do the sort of Casbolt work and Curnow to play the deeper forward. And to be honest, I know Levi's got a great pair of hands, even though they were not on display tonight, I'll tell you that. They need to move on from a couple of players. I watched Sam Walsh carefully tonight. Look, he's got a great engine and he's definitely got a place in that team. So it'd be nicer if he used the ball a little bit better, but if they could take advantage of his running with, look, Zach Williams is exactly the sort of player they could benefit from. More outside run. They should go for Jared Pollock. I just think they need a bit more outside use. I don't mind their ball getting ability, and they set up really well. They're well coached. David Teague's done right by the team. I'll tell you that much. He really has.
I think they need. I agree on Pollock, but I think they need more. And Pollock isn't this. I reckon I'm a big fan of explosive midfielders.
They're the best type.
Well, of course they are. And, Dustin Martin, he's not necessarily super quick, Dusty, but he is explosive because of his power.
Yeah, that's right.
You look at West Coast, Luke Shuey, I think, is explosive. It's not necessarily just about lightning pace, Brad Hill. It's just about that ability to break free of congestion with strength as well. I think they lack that in the middle.
They're not easy to get, though, are they?
No, they're not. And I think, without harping on about the team I follow, I think that's a big problem for Essendon because they lack both power and explosiveness. And they don't get enough of either in the midfielders they have. But that, to me, is what Carlton lacks. I think you need to see the forward setup ticking over with Curnow there. Be interesting. I don't know, can they play Curnow and Mackay and Casbolt? Or does Casbolt go back to defence? But they've got a bit of flexibility there, I think, when they review their season, provided Curnow comes back. I must admit, I haven't heard much about his progress lately. I mean, we're assuming he'll be okay with a year off, but geez, it's been a while. And as we've seen with Cornelio and a few others, they don't necessarily come back the same player that they left before they got injured.
I mean, the other thing is, and I saw a stat tonight on Fox before the game of how little time Cripps spends forward. He's not really a goal-kicking midfielder. He's not a great shot at goal. Murphy occasionally hits the scoreboard, but you can't really rely on Mark Murphy. They don't get a lot of goals out of their midfield, do they?
No, and I think the other thing, I'm not saying Carlton does this more than anyone else, but, there's a lot of teams now that are sort of trying to replicate the fundamentals of the Richmond style and pace and endurance and tackling pressure in the opposition's defensive 50. But you've got to have the right sort of players to be able to execute that. And I think, again, that has been a real issue for Essendon. I don't think Essendon has the sort of players that necessarily suits the type of game they've been trying to play. And I think Carlton has tried to up the ante in that forward pressure. I'm not sure they've got them either. Maybe they're harder players to identify because they're not necessarily the players who, pound for pound in terms of pure football skill, you would take, at a reasonably high place in the draft. I mean, have a look, for example, at Dan Butler and Jason Castagna. Now Castagna came off the rookie list, didn't he? And I can't remember about Butler, but neither of them were particularly. They weren't high draft picks, but they have enough endurance and enough pace and enough tackling technique, I guess you can teach that, to become very effective pressure forwards. You know, the way, I guess, the traditional means of recruiting players perhaps aren't the sort of skill sets we should be looking for if you're attempting to play that sort of game. It's a different set of abilities that you need to be able to play that brand of footy. Maybe that's a bit of an issue for several teams now as well.